Hi everyone, this is Katie and this is my life with VEDS, or Vascular Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. Today I'm going to talk to you about my spleen rupture, which happened just a couple weeks ago on October 10th, 2021. I'm going to talk about how this happened, what it felt like, what it was done to treat it, and obviously how I'm doing now at home recovering. Before I get into this video, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, I'd really love it if you did. On this channel I talk about my story with VEDS, I share community updates and exciting things happening in the community as they pop up, and I also share other people's stories with VEDS through my podcast, Staying Connected, so I'll share pieces of the podcast here. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if that sounds good to you, and thank you. So on October 10th, I was getting ready to leave my house and I went to go get a soda out of the fridge. I wasn't doing anything strenuous. This was not really a physical thing. As I was getting the soda out of the fridge, I felt this intense, weird pain kind of underneath my chest at the bottom of my ribcage in the center. And at first I thought it was like a weird gas bubble, but within seconds I knew something was really wrong. Like, it just didn't feel right. It was a feeling that I had. It was very painful, and as I was calling 911 to let them know where I lived and that I needed an ambulance and that I had this crazy connective tissue condition that causes these crazy things to happen to me, I laid on my couch right here because I felt like I might pass out. I was going into like this cold sweat. I lost feeling in my right foot briefly, and I had this feeling like I was internally bleeding or that I might have an aortic dissection or something. Like, my mind was obviously racing, and I had to get that kind of under control and stop hyperventilating and just kind of sit with that pain while the firefighters and EMTs arrived. So when they got here, I was really relieved, honestly, that I was here in Washington. I mean, this was the whole reason I moved. I hadn't gone there yet to visit them and introduce myself, which is something that I do every time that I move, but I hadn't done it yet. I had just gotten here really a few weeks prior, and it was taking my time. But I was grateful that I had my vascular surgeon on the phone when they arrived, and she told them where I needed to go and what I had, and it was really the best experience for something that you hope would never happen. So somewhere during the time of the firefighters arriving and arriving at the hospital via ambulance, that pain kind of stabilized at a pretty intense level, kind of just in my abdomen. It hurt to breathe in deeply. It kind of hurt more on my left side. If I breathed in really deep, it was like this sharp pain, and it kind of just felt hard to breathe because it felt like there was a lot of pressure there in my abdomen. I was also like burping a lot, and I don't really have an explanation for that other than maybe there was a lot of just pressure there on my esophagus or on my stomach causing me to burp. It was a very strange symptom, and I didn't know what to make of it. Honestly, for some time at the hospital, I thought maybe my stomach had ruptured, or I didn't really know what had happened. And of course, your mind races and you wonder. So when I got a scan at the hospital, it showed that I had 3 units of blood in my abdomen, but it had kind of stopped bleeding, I think, so they couldn't tell where it had come from. So it was just like this mystery bleed in my abdomen. I was admitted to the ICU, and they thought, you know, we'll just wait, we'll watch and see and monitor and make sure it doesn't happen again and hope that it doesn't happen again. Because sometimes that happens. Sometimes people with VEDS get these spontaneous bleeds that kind of heal on their own, and we were hoping that's what it was. On Monday in the ICU, I did pretty well. My vitals were okay, like my blood pressure, my heart rate, but my hemoglobin and like red blood cell counts were steadily dropping throughout the day, which we kind of thought could be a lag from a test. We really didn't know. But I was hopeful that it was a mystery bleed and that it wasn't going to happen again. So on Tuesday morning when I woke up in the ICU, I felt pretty good. I felt like I was approaching the day with optimism, and I was on strict bed rest. I hit the little button to just raise the headrest on the bed in the ICU, and all of a sudden I had the same pain that I did on Sunday, and I knew without a doubt that I was internally bleeding. I called my doctor, I told the resident and the nurse, and I was a bit panicked. I'm like, I'm internally bleeding again and I know it and I need a scan, and it was 4 in the morning, which is not an unusual time for me to wake up. We got another CTA and it showed that I was bleeding, but again, we couldn't tell where it was coming from. So they decided that I needed a catheter angiogram, which is where they take that little catheter camera line thing and they put it through my femoral artery in my groin and kind of weave it up through my vascular system to see where I was bleeding. And this is a procedure that's dangerous for somebody with VEDS because of the fragile tissue. So I was grateful that it was done at an expert center with my vascular surgeon that I know and love and trust, and the team knew about VEDS and had operated on people with VEDS before. It was still very scary to go into that and not know if it was going to be okay, but I figured I had the best chance there of anywhere else. So later that morning, they went in and did this. They, put me under and they did the catheter through my groin, and they went up through my aorta and then into my splenic artery, where they found that it was actually my spleen that had a big laceration on it. So my spleen had ruptured, which is a solid organ. And that's something that's not common with VEDS. So because my spleen was bleeding, they could have removed the spleen, but they decided to go and embolize the artery, the splenic artery, which feeds the spleen. So that's like a major blood supply to the spleen from my understanding, and by cutting that supply off with a coil, it would hopefully prevent the spleen from continuing to bleed. So it's kind of an alternative route to treating this spleen rupture. And they did that. Everything went smoothly. I woke up a little while later and I was excited to see images of my arteries and my insides, and I was really grateful that everything went okay. And everything kind of got slowly better from there. It was pretty painful. My whole abdomen was very, very tender because I had so much blood just kind of sitting in my abdomen and irritating the organs, and it was all where it wasn't supposed to be. I was really tired. I had lost a lot of blood. I ended up needing a unit of blood on Wednesday, I think it was. It was Tuesday or Wednesday, to kind of help my blood levels rise because they were continuing to drop. But I spent the rest of the week in the ICU healing and taking my time healing, and was finally able to sit up in bed on Wednesday and walk on Thursday a little bit, and it just kind of continued to get very slowly better from there. I was discharged on Saturday, the following, that same week. So I went in on Sunday and then came out that Saturday. So I think it was the 16th. And I've been at home healing ever since. Just taking my time with it, working up to a little bit of physical activity, like just walking. I'm only walking right now. I have a follow-up scan in a couple weeks to make sure that everything is looking good in there. But my understanding is that that part of my spleen will die, and the other parts of my spleen that have alternative blood flows to it will survive. So I didn't lose the entirety of my spleen, and that's the hope. So I'll find out how it's going at that follow-up. I went back to the fire station after I was discharged and brought them cookies because the firefighters and EMTs were just so nice. And the guy there had went and visited my Facebook page and saw my posts, and it was just a super sweet moment, and he's really excited to have more information about VEDS, and my vascular surgeon's going to go with me and educate the local responders there. And really, I'm just very grateful that everything went as well as it could for something that shouldn't ever happen. And that's how I'm doing. So there's a mental recovery that goes along with this. And for me, I kind of fell into this routine after my mini strokes that helped me kind of move forward once I got home from the hospital. When I got home, I pretty much needed to tidy everything up. I needed to kind of go back to the places where these things happened and live in those spaces for a little while. So for some reason that helps me move forward. So when I got home, I went through the motions of everything that happened. I opened my fridge, I grabbed a soda, I remembered what that felt like. I came inside and I stood where I called 911, and then laid on my couch where I was on the phone with them, and where I was on the phone with my vascular surgeon, and where I was when the EMTs arrived. And for some reason that helps me move forward, and I figured that out sometime during my mini strokes. But it's a very anxious time when I first come home, and it just is like... So spleen ruptures are not common for people with VEDS. It is an uncommon occurrence from my understanding for the actual spleen to rupture, because with VEDS, you know, it's usually the hollow organs, the arteries, the aorta, the bowels, you know, things like that that are hollow. But the spleen is like this solid organ, and somehow for me it spontaneously ruptured. I wasn't doing anything strenuous. I was just living, getting a soda out of my fridge, and that is what VEDS is. It's a terrifying, spontaneous thing, and I have to be ready for it at any time. I'm hopeful for the future because there's so much going on right now for VEDS, and I'm very grateful that I happen to be here, that I knew I needed to be here in Washington, and I'm grateful that I made it here before this event happened. I don't know if this event would have happened if I had still been in Florida. I don't know how it would have gone. Like, there's just so much uncertainty with VEDS, but what I do know is that I couldn't have been at a better place, at a better time for this to happen. If it had never happened, that would have been the only better thing. So thank you for listening. I hope you all are doing well, and I hope this video is helpful. I will continue to heal at home. It will take some time. There will be a period of time where I'm just working up to physical activity and I'm more tired than normal and just trying to get back into some kind of flow and continue to heal. I will keep you updated on how that follow-up goes. Thank you for all your support over the last couple weeks. I love you all so much, and I really appreciate it, and I will see you soon.